Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Ons hoor vir jou. Good afternoon. Baron Mosselby, Southern Cape, Garden Route. Can anybody tell me who's the chairperson of this meeting?
Councillor Baron, I will chair it of our
Alright.
meeting. Thank you.
Alright, dankie raadlid.
100% baie welkom aan 100% baie welkom aan elkeen.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. I just want to check if the meeting has started, if anybody can hear me. It's Councillor Gous.
Good afternoon, Councillor Gous. We will start at 2.
Thank you, Acting Admin.
Councillor Gous, we will start at 2.
My apologies. That was the Acting Mayor. Thank you very much.
Councillor Gous, I'm already taking enough flack as it is. I don't want to take the MM's flack as well. Good afternoon, colleagues. I think we can start. My name is Dirk. I'm the acting mayor for now. Then I want to welcome all the councillors who's logged in. Then also the community who's viewing via YouTube. And then in the chambers with us, we've got our municipal manager, acting municipal manager, Mr. Dick Naidu, or Director Dick Naidu, Mr. Niels Prins, our legal advisor, or not advisor, manager, and then councillors Annetjie Janse van Rensburg, councillor Anton Delamain, councillor Leon van Dijk, then directors present from of the Mosselbaai municipality is Director Nel and Venter, Karl Venter. I think he's eating biltong or something at this stage, so enjoy that. And then it's actually, yeah, it's past lunchtime because I'm also a bit hungry this afternoon. But we'll first go through the meeting, and then also our colleagues from the Garden Route District Municipality, Dr. Johan Skuman and Mr. Angus Andries. And then I've seen also some of our colleagues from Province who logged in. I think it was Mr. Sean Arends and Mr. Walid. Am I correct?
Good day, everyone. This is Walid speaking. I have logged in, yes.
Good afternoon. And Mr. Sean Arends, is he present? Okay, then I also see.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Lance McBain, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. Sean Arends is present. I think he may just have a minute there, and
Okay.
I think I'll join.
Perfect.
Soon.
Sorry, I am here. I just took a call. What was asked of me? I missed that.
No, we
Your
just
name.
welcome you. We just
Oh,
welcome
Oh, okay. Sorry. So must I introduce myself?
you. Can?
Yeah, okay. So yes, I'm also from the Department of Environmental Affairs. As my colleagues, we sit in the waste management licensing unit within the department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arends, and I'm also a man or male, so I understand that the multitasking. Obviously, I'm just joking with a new medium of electronic communication. It is a bit daunting at stages. We
Sure.
also experience that.
Sure.
Okay, colleagues, then we're going to move forward. At the last council meeting, we've asked for a discussion or information session regarding the Rooikat project. At this stage, I'm just going to give a bit of background from my side, the way I understand it, and then we've got all the role players, all the professional people, staff also available this afternoon to also help explain and help address the questions or answer the questions. But the way I see it, there was a waste application for this project, which has been dealt with by the provincial department, and that is who Mr. Arends and Walid and Lance is representing. And as far as I understand, that appeal has been dismissed. I've only heard that this morning because I had various discussions with Minister Bradell over the past 2 days, and yesterday he told me that the community can still engage with him, and that he will send some of his knowledgeable staff, because he's the appeal authority, so he himself can't help us, but that he will send some of his knowledgeable people in the directorate under him to assist the community with their fears or worries. He said that it's important that we understand that obviously you base your arguments on legal arguments and not emotions. And also other thing that he mentioned is that a lot of the times the community see it as a all or nothing approach. And obviously it's not supposed to be like that. So yeah, that's just some of the starting remarks. Then the second thing that's been looked at is obviously the land use. Now at this stage, we all know that the land where the application is for, the Rooikat at the back of in the industrial area of Grootbrak, that is a zone 3, which is basically heavy industry. And we know that the Rooikat project only need the zone 2. So they're within the allowed zoning by far. So, and from the municipality side, obviously they've got the established rights in terms of zoning. So from our side, there's no legal argument or way that you can go against this. Obviously they've got rights, and if we say no, then they can go to court because they've got established rights. So that's important to understand. Then the third one, which is currently running, is the air emissions license, which has been dealt with the district, and the appeal authority for that is the municipal manager at district level, which is Minister Mondi Strate. So this is just some of the background remarks from my side. I'm then going to give over to Sean. Can I give over to you just to give some background from your side as well regarding this application? Will that be fine?
Yeah, so some of the things you mentioned, it is correct, or most of it. And yes, so we also saw the appeal was dismissed this morning, and I wanted to add as well that yes, on your comment about emotions and legalities, is that this facility was licensed through the legislative framework that we enforce. And you would see there the questions and the appeal was based on the process wasn't correct, or the impacts to the environment wasn't considered. And we have done all of those things. When we authorize these facilities, we do understand, especially waste facilities, is that these it's nobody wants waste or activities in their backyard. And this is a classic case of this. But we as the licensing authority have to consider both livelihoods of people, consider impacts to the environment, and also managing waste as well. That is what we specialize in, to divert these types of waste away from landfill sites, and also the specific waste, which is plastics and tires, which is a problematic waste stream currently. And that is why the amongst other reasons why we're also authorizing this facility. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. And then what was requested of us is to do a presentation on the process. So I think is that where we are now, or are we gonna does that happen a little bit later?
No, you can carry on with it. Thanks a lot, Sean.
Okay, then Walid, can you then go ahead with that? With the pre, okay.
Chairperson, Mr. Darkotsa, can I come in quickly?
Yes, sure, Councillor.
Councillor Baron. From my side, I firstly want to thank you specifically for allowing this workshop. I just want to tell the panel currently there's people struggling to get in to link with this meeting. But I also have people here with me that asked me, that was driving the process here from Great Bracks Rivers, the public participation process. Mr. Ronald Hakkelboot is here, and also Evert de Lange. So they will ask questions, but thank you for the opportunity from my side. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay. What we'll do is we first go through all the presentations, and then I will allow for 1 or 2 questions. That will be fine if they're logged in with the meeting. The other people who's not been able to log in, who's joining us through the other channel, YouTube, they're more than welcome to also submit their questions or comments. And then that will also be, if we can have that by Friday, you can send it to Councillor Annetjie Baron or Janse van Rensburg. And then Anton, Baron, and Aniki, any three of them, and or the admin, that is admin@mosselbay.gov.za, that will be the other one, and then that questions will also be answered in writing. Okay, then we can carry on with the presentation. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I'd just like to introduce myself briefly. My name is Walid Khalfan, and my colleagues are Sean and Lance. Here today, we are hoping to briefly discuss the Rooikat recycling proposed development of a pilot depolymerization plant in Mossel Bay. And we are not the EEPs that carried out this application, nor the engineers that designed this process. We just here to provide some basic information, and I hope that will be informative in this regard. Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to also bring to everyone's attention that plastics are essentially made from oils, and at some point it becomes a waste material, and those waste materials can be problematic waste materials, they can be non-recyclable plastics, or they can be recyclable plastics. And even recyclable plastics are not, at the end of the day, recycled. They end up in the environment, polluting the oceans, polluting our properties, our land, etc. So the point of this pilot project is to almost reverse that process, take a waste material and return it to an oil state where that oil can be reused, and that oil can be reused as a heavy fuel oil, or it can be distilled through another process to produce diesel. So the EEP that was involved in this process was Sharples Environmental Services, and there's a picture showing the basic layout of the site. As you can see, there's on the top left corner, there's an entrance gate, and on the top right corner, there's an exit gate. So the truck comes in, offloads the waste material. Then there's some office buildings, dormitory buildings, and then you'll see this plant in the bottom left, bottom right corner, sorry, that's the depolymerization plant. And then there's some storage areas for the products that come from the process. The oil that comes from the process, the steel wire that comes from the tires, and carbon black as well that comes from the process. So we'll get to the dimensions, but what you see here is an illustration of how small this technology really is. And the depolymerization plant on its own is actually less than 400 square meters. It's something like 20 by 15 meters. Okay, so the Rooikat recycling company is proposing to do or to recycle 10 to 20 tons of plastics and tires on a daily basis, 6 days a week, for a period of time. And during that period of time, they are hoping to collect essential data about this process, how this process can be improved, how they can improve the yield of the products that come at the end of this process. And also, as mentioned before, it provides a solution to non-recyclable plastic waste, which can now be converted into fuel. But the process is also a closed loop process in the sense that emissions are very much controlled. So the gases that come from the furnace will be cooled and then recycled into the furnace to fuel the furnace itself. So initially they're talking about using LPG gas to kickstart the process. But once the process is running optimally, there will be heavy fuel oil that comes from the process, and also the off gas, which can then be used in the furnace and there will obviously there will be no requirement to use LPG gas to fuel the furnace. Yeah, and then obviously the off gas from the furnace gets into a chemical scrubber, to reduce atmospheric emissions and environmental impact. So in that regard, the process is very much a closed loop system. What you're seeing now is just a illustration of the size of the facility. You'll see the 68 meters on the top and 31 meters on the sides. And then you will see also how small this depolymerization plant is. There's 7 meters over there, another 7 meters over there. It's quite small. Yeah. I think I've already touched on this process flow. It really explains that the plastic enters the plant in the furnace, where the furnace heats up the plastic and the tires to make this heavy fuel oil. The vapor that comes off it is separated from the liquids, and the off gas obviously returns back to the furnace, so that there is less dependence on LPG gas. The carbon black is a product that can be used, obviously the heavy fuel oil, which can be used in the furnace, and also as a product which can be further distilled to produce diesel. Yeah, we've already explained how the scrubber works, that the off gas from the furnace is extracted to a scrubber before it is released into the atmosphere. So the products that come from this process is the heavy fuel oil, which can obviously be distilled further to produce diesel, and then the steel from the tires, which we've discussed, and it is obviously proposed that this steel be recycled, which makes very good sense. Then the carbon black that comes from the process is also extensively used in manufacturing of rubber, plastic, ink products, and it can also be used as a coal alternative, so it can be briquetted basically. We've discussed the gases as well that come from the process. It will be recycled into the furnace to fuel the furnace, and the off gas that comes from the furnace is sent to the scrubber before being emitted into the atmosphere. They have mentioned that there could be flaring, but that is only for emergency circumstances, and that is not the intention of the facility. They don't intend to flare the gas at all, but should there be an emergency situation, then that gas will be flared. Yeah. Another thing that we considered is the waste streams in the Mossel Bay municipality. There was a waste characterization study that was done, and there was also waste information that gets submitted on our department's integrated pollutant and waste information system. And we basically extrapolated that information, and we found that there's approximately 3,264 tons of soft plastics and 3,234 tons of hard plastics in the Mossel Bay municipal waste stream on an annual basis, and that's specifically based on 2019 data. So when we analyze the figures of Rooikat recycling, where they're proposing to do 10 to 20 tons per day for 6 days a week, that's about 3,120 tons to 6,240 tons per year. And the waste characterization study made it evident that there's about 6,500 tons of plastic waste only. So there's actually more waste if you include the waste tires in the Mossel Bay area. But obviously, we cannot divert all of that plastic waste to this facility because we don't have enough source separation efforts. in the municipality. So that is why it's important for Rooikat to reach out to other municipalities and other waste generators, probably within a nearby range, for example, the Garden Route district municipality, to gather sufficient tons of waste to proceed or to get meaningful results in this pilot project. With regards to the activities applied for, we authorized the recycling of general waste at the facility that has an operational area in excess of 500 square meters, excluding recycling that takes place as an integral part of an internal manufacturing process within the same premises. So technically, the depolymerisation plant is less than 500 square meters, but when we looked at the project as a whole, the whole footprint area exceeded 500 square meters. So that is why we authorized that activity. Then there was the next activity, the recovery of waste, including refining, utilization, or co-processing of waste in excess of 10 tons, but less than 100 tons of general waste per day, or in excess of 500 kilograms, but less than 1 ton of hazardous waste per day, excluding recovery that takes place as an integral part of an internal manufacturing process within the same premises. And we need you all to ignore the fact that it talks about hazardous waste. We've only authorized general waste, but the listed activity is specified as such. Then the next activity is the treatment of general waste using any form of treatment at a facility that has a capacity to process in excess of 10 tons but less than 100 tons. And lastly, it's the construction activity, the construction of a facility for a waste management activity listed in category A of the schedule, not in isolation to associated waste management activity. Then the basic assessment, sorry if I just backtrack over there. These are category A listed activities that require a basic assessment process. So essentially the basic assessment process is quite simple. An application form must be submitted to the authority, in that case with our department. Then there needs to be a public participation process of a minimum period of 30 days, where the interested and affected parties have access to the basic assessment report. And once all of those comments are gathered from the affected and interested parties, the final basic assessment report has to be submitted to our department for decision making. Thereafter, we had 107 days to decide on the application whether to grant or refuse a waste management license in respect of the application. And then there's just 5 days to issue the decision and 14 days for the appeals period. Okay, so for this particular case, in the pre-application phase, so this is before an application was submitted to our department, a site notice was placed at the facility. There's been an advertisement in the Mossel Bay Advertiser. The draft basic assessment report was made available to various stakeholders, including Cape Nature, George, Garden Route District Municipality, the Public Library, and some of our other directorates within the department. And then the interested and affected parties were able to comment on that process and the documents and specialist reports within the time frame that was provided by the EAP. And because of the lockdown, that period was extended. So there you'll see the availability of the bar was, the basic assessment report was from the 28th of February to 30th of June 2020. Usually it's just 30 days, but this basic assessment report was made available for a much longer period. So the public had over the minimum number of days to provide their comments. And then the basic assessment report was obviously sent with notification letters and was also submitted to the the authority, our department, with a comments and response report. Then in the post-application phase, in other words, after the application was submitted to the department, the basic assessment report was made available again to the public over the days specified, and this was done electronically as well. It was provided on the Environmental Assessment Practitioner's website. There were also virtual meetings hosted by residents associations, as well as the applicant, Rooikat Recycling. And similar to the pre-application phase, the various interested and affected parties and stakeholders were given direct notification via email of the availability of the basic assessment report, which was then finally submitted to this department on 29th of January 2021. I think that is it that I wanted to say here today.
Thanks a lot, Walid. Then I'm going to ask for Dr. Johan Skuman to do his thing. Thanks a lot.
Good afternoon, Executive Mayor. Thank you very much for the opportunity, councillors and all present, all protocol observed. While I'm sharing my presentation, I just want to introduce myself again. I'm Johan Skuman from the Garnerwood District Municipality, Manager Equality Control. And my colleague Angus Andrews is also here with me. I'm going to share the screen now for my presentation. Just give me a minute. Just bear with me. I'm going to share it now. It's just struggling.
Colleagues, while we're struggling to get the technology going, I'm going to ask for Director Karel Venter to do his briefing so long. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Afternoon, everybody. Like always, it's a privilege to present. My presentation will be very short. I will basically, I did not prepare a presentation. I will see if I can perhaps just share a map, Mayor, if you don't mind. Let me do that. It will, I'm sure okay, it seems like that it is on the screen now. What I'm indicating to you is there in purple is the portion of respective sites in Grootbrak, which is actually zoned industrial zone 3 as indicated there. So initially we were approached as a municipality, first of all by the developer and then later by the community to confirm the zoning of these areas. I can therefore confirm, as it was at that stage, that the zoning of these respective sites and also where this proposed development is supposed to happen is actually zone 3. We did receive questions, which is the correct zoning for the proposed development. And therefore no rezoning application was requested to be submitted and considered by the municipality. We also, and I'm going to end off with this, Mayor, what also happened is questions were asked, why are these sites actually zoned industrial zone 3? Because there's really not a lot of industrial zone 3 properties within Mossel Bay. And it all links to the history of a Creosote aanleg, which was located somewhere else in Grootbrak. And I think those residents and members of the public who is staying in Grootbrak for a long time is aware of this Creosote aanleg, which was subsequently moved to these properties. And at that stage, the appropriate zoning was allocated to that property, which was bigger than you see in terms of the subdivisions, the borders. So then it was then after that, it was subdivided into smaller pieces, but the zoning remained that of industrial zone 3, and therefore we also have what we consider as heavy industries also located in the surrounding, like the brick manufacturing, which is also nearby. So that, in short, Mayor, is the reason for the particular zoning, and I can confirm that the zoning is in order in terms of a planning scheme of a municipality. Thank you.
Colleagues, okay, thank you, Director Venter, thank you very much. And then I see the presentation of Dr. Skuman, so then I'm going to give over to him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Meyer and colleagues. Sorry about the technical difficulties I had. I'm not going to repeat what my colleagues from the Waste Department already mentioned. So let me just go to the next slide. Just a disclaimer before I start. I just want to make it clear that my presentation only deals with the air quality competency of the Garden District Municipality. I'm not representing Rooikat Recycling. I cannot talk on behalf of the Provincial EIA Department or the Waste Management Department, the specialists conducting the air quality studies, and definitely not the two appeal bodies. I'm going to address questions related to air quality and our functions in terms of the Garden District Municipality. As a start, I just want to say that all air quality work in the Garden Route is done according to an air quality management plan. And this plan talks to the B municipalities in our region as well. So the Mossel Bay municipality also have an air quality management plan that linked to the Garden Route plan. We actually did that as a joint project every 5 years when we develop our plans, making sure that all our municipalities are in compliance with air quality management. Now, our vision is to have air quality worthy of the name, the Garden Route. We know the Garden Route is a tourism attraction, and it's a world-renowned area, and we really want to make sure that it stays that way. So when we are dealing with air quality matters and licenses, we always have that in the back of our heads and in our minds to actually live up to our vision. Now, with the mission statement in the plan is to minimize the impact of air pollutants in our region. But having said that, we must always remember that we all have a right to clean air in terms of Section 24 of the Constitution. But on the other hand, people also have the right for property. So there must be a fine balance between that constitutional right of the environment and also the constitutional right of people to actually make a living in our area. And when we are doing air quality licensing, we must always take a decision that are defensible in terms of the Constitution and also in terms of the Air Quality Act. So it's always striking a balance between the sustainable development and the impact on the environment. And I think that's very important. I'm not going to repeat what my colleague said. My presentation outline is more or less our functions in terms of air quality management. What is authorizations, the key aspects of an atmospheric emission license, the appeal, I'm just going to touch on it quickly. The Rooikat proposed facility background and the Rooikat license application, public participation, the main concerns from the public, the specialist air quality study, decisions on the application, monitoring, compliance and enforcement, the waste management license, and then the way forward. It sounds long, but I'm going to be quick. In terms of our function, the B municipality also have an air quality function, but that is enshrined in the Constitution, Part B, Schedule 4. And our function of a district is actually given to us in terms of the Air Quality Act, which say that we are doing the licensing of listed activities. And also it's also mentioned in the national framework. Now, what is authorization? And nobody can actually start a business if it's listed in terms of the Air Quality Act. They cannot start if they don't apply for atmospheric emission license. That's the first thing. And then also, if it's listed in terms of the air quality, it will also list it as a EIA listing activity. So they must actually go through two processes. One is the EIA process, and one is the licensing process in terms of the Air Quality Act. Now, the AEL is a key regulatory tool for managing the ambient air quality in a particular area. Illicit activities have also associated national minimum emission limits that they have to comply with. And thus, national minimum emission standards have been developed with the aim of managing the air quality to within acceptable levels in mind, and have also considered the potential of cumulative air pollution concentrations occurring due to multiple sources. And you will see later on, we actually, when we requested the specialist air quality study, we asked them not to only look at Rooikat, they must also look at the other industries in that area to actually capture the cumulative effect of all the industries in that specific area. These emission standards have also been developed with best available technology in mind. And then also fugitive emissions and also noise and dust. The key aspects of an AEL, if at one, the atmospheric emission license look at the ambient air quality of that area, but it also look at the minimum emission limit set for that specific category. Now, if we receive an atmospheric emission license, this schematic just show you that if we receive an atmospheric emission license, it's always go, if it's a new application, it must go hand in hand with the EIA process. And if the decision, there should be a decision point at that stage. If it's no, we will inform the applicant that your application wasn't successful. If it's yes, we must determine which type of atmospheric emission license will be issued. Now, every new application, just to rest assured that we will always just first issue a provisional atmospheric emission license, not a full license from the start. The provisional atmospheric license will be valid for a period of a year, and people will have to comply, show compliance for a period of at least 6 months. And we can actually go further and issue a second provisional license if we see that this is a problematic industry. So we can actually even issue a second provisional and not a full atmospheric emission license from the start. And then if we say yes, then we will set emission limits according to the legislation. We will set timeframes for compliance, and we will actually draft other conditions. We can actually draft any conditions that are applicable to air quality. It's really wide open for us to actually manage that facility in terms of that license. I'm going to touch on the appeal quickly. The appeal authority in terms of the EIA or the waste license was the MEC, and our mayor already alluded to the fact that the appeal was dismissed. But there's still another appeal in terms of the air quality part, and that is with our municipal manager that the mayor already also alluded to. And as I said, the appeal was lodged against the granting of the PAL. And that was done in terms of Section 62 of the Systems Act. Let's look at the Rooikat proposed facility background. It's located on portion 21. Mr. Venter already showed you the map and the zoning map of that area. It's industrial zone 3, as he already mentioned. That's for noxious trade. So that is the correct zoning for this facility. I'm not going to go through the activity now again because I think my colleagues from the Waste Department already went through the whole process, and I think all the documents were circulated in the basic assessment reports and so forth. I just want to make it clear that this process is not going to deal with hazardous waste. There's a big difference between general waste and hazardous waste. Tires and plastic is regarded in the definition as general waste and not hazardous waste. Hazardous waste is like the waste incinerator located in George, where they actually incinerate like medical waste. And it could be chemicals. That is hazardous waste. This process is not hazardous waste. It's just general waste. And even the product coming from this process is not hazardous waste. It's a product. Diesel and HFO and the metal recovery, that's not regarded as hazardous waste. I've just put a map on the screen that you can just see where the location is. The closest residential area is about 1.3 kilometers from the site. It's embedded actually between two industrial areas, big industries. It's between Reebok Bricks and Woodline, and it's on the Mobicast facility in Grey Park River. Just to zoom in quickly, where you can see the pole yard where my cursor is, and then the existing Mobicast is there where my cursor is moving now, and the proposed site is on Mobicast. And here in the bottom of your screen, you will see that is where Reebok Bricks is located. And just to zoom in, this is just a picture of the Mobicast, and it will be located on that specific premises there. The feedstock, as my colleagues already alluded to, is recycled plastic and tires. There will be some size reduction, and then it will be put in an auto feeder, and it will go to a reactor. I'm not really going to deal with the technicals because my colleagues already mentioned that in their presentation. This is perhaps just a schematic again of the whole process. It's a closed loop system, as my colleagues from province already alluded to as well. All the off gas will be recycled back to as a fuel for the process. And then the heavy fuel oil will be distilled to diesel at the end, and carbon black will also be produced by the process. And here I again just want to mention that the two categories that are actually triggered by the Air Quality Act is category 3.4, which is charcoal and carbon black production, and then category 8.1. It's a thermal treatment of general and hazardous waste. Now that hazardous waste is just in the name of that category. There will be no hazardous waste produced by this or dealt with or handled by this process. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to go back to the slide. Section 21 listed notice does not make provision for the activity under category 2 petroleum industry. There were lots of questions about the distillation of diesel, and I want just to clear this now with this slide. Category 8.1, which they are categorized as 3.4 and 8.1. 8.1 is the strictest, the most strict category in the Air Quality Act. If the people say, but the distillation of diesel wasn't mentioned, it was mentioned, but if it wasn't mentioned, then and we say, okay, let's categorize them as distillation of diesel. There's no category in the Air Quality Act per se that deals with distillation of diesel, so they wouldn't have been a listed activity then. So then we couldn't have regulated them. If you look at the category 2, which is petroleum industry in terms of the Air Quality Act, that's big industries like Petro SA, where there's catalytic cracking units, combustion installations on board. This is not them. There are lots of biodiesel plants. They are not listed. If we had to list them in terms of category 2, they only had to comply with 3 pollutants that they had to measure. With 8.1, there's a whole list of pollutants that they have to abide with and comply with, making it the most strict category. They have to install a continuous emission monitoring system from the onset. That's a requirement. They will have to measure all the pollutants on that list continuously, 24 hours a day, so that we as authorities can at any time go there and record it and see what was the measurements of that SEMS, what was emitted, does it comply with the minimum emission limits. So that's a way of regulating them. And it's a costly exercise. I mean, doing the SEMS will cost them in the area of 4 to 5 million rand just for that SEMS system. So that's why I say this is a very strict category to actually comply with. The public participation process, there were 2 processes involved. First of all, it was the EIA process. We, as the Equality Act, also have a public participation process, and we asked them to do both. They had to do the public participation process in terms of the EIA, and they also had to do the public participation process in terms of the Equality Act. It involved a pre-application phase, a post-application phase, direct notification. There were over 150 interested affected parties registered for this project. We had a clarification meeting on the 23rd of November and then also on the 10th of December 2020. And then there was a full comments and response document, and all the comments were responded to by the EP at the time. The main concerns from the public was the experience and the expertise of the team, the public participation process in its totality. They had questions about that. The motivation for the site location, misconception regarding operations, burning of tires, public waste drop-off. People think it's going to be a place where tires are burnt. Nothing going to be burnt there. It's a process of pyrolysis. There's a big difference between incineration and pyrolysis in this case as well. There were traffic considerations. There were socio-economic concerns, provision of jobs for the local community, viability of technology and business proposal, impact on sense of place and tourism in the area, biological concerns, potential for health, stormwater pollution and litter. So that was the concerns raised. All the organs of state were informed by through the EP. And you can see, for just to zoom into our region, Gardenwood was involved, Mossel Municipality, all the different departments was involved, as also as registered interested affected parties in this whole process. We asked this applicant to do a specialist air quality study. It was done by Mr. Chris Albertine, who is a chemical engineer in trade. Mr. Chris Albertine, he did a dispersion modeling study, and he actually modeled all the pollutants in where there were ambient air quality limits involved, comparing the emissions with the ambient air quality standards. And as you can see in this table, if you just look at PM10, that's particulate matter. We looked at the Rooikat process, and we also look at the cumulative effect when we actually add Rooikat with Reebok-Stene and woodline. And comparing with the ambient air quality standard, you can see it's about the emissions of particulate matter will be 1,000 times lower than what the air quality standards actually specify. Then also SO2 and all the other pollutants, you can see when you compare it with the air quality standard, it's much lower. The emissions, they won't exceed that. Even if it was, and remember, when we're doing the specialist air quality standards, you're using the maximum concentrations emitted by the. So it's a worst possible scenario that are actually predicted. And even the 99th percentile, that is when you get emissions 1% of the time where there's upset conditions. So that was also modeled and compared with the air quality standards. And we also did the specialists also went and did the model in the residential areas. And there you can see, because it's further away from the process, it's actually even lower than what was modeled at the site as well. And this is just a picture of the dispersion modeling study and where the plume will actually go when it was modeled. The decision on the application, the atmospheric emission license was granted on the 8th of June this year, and the waste management license was granted about a week or two before, on the 21st of May. We couldn't actually issue the AEL before the EIA hasn't been issued, because it takes precedence over the AEL process. We looked at the Section 39 factors. That is factors that we as a licensing authority must take into account when we're taking decision. And that's the public input, minimum emission limits for the ambient air quality, and also the point sources, the pollution caused by the activity. We looked at the effect on the health and the environment. We look at if the person, the applicant, is a fit and proper person. If the applicant, a fit and proper person, is defined in the Act, that if a person has one of the criteria, if they had previous convictions in terms of environmental legislation, we can't issue them with a license. This is very much important to this application as well. So the people know, the applicant know, that if they want to do any further future business in terms of environmental issues, if they're not complying with a fit and proper person, then they're not going to get a license. So they won't jeopardize their reputation polluting the air if they know they can actually be convicted, and they won't be regarded as a fit and proper person for the future. So it will actually definitely influence the future in terms of business, doing business. We look at the ecological and cultural heritage. We look at the best available technology. We've satisfied that the process, the technology is actually best available for this process. And we also look at the submissions of the applicant. Now, beyond licensing, that's very important. I'm almost done with my presentation. I just want to say that the issuing of the license is the easy part. It's beyond licensing that is important. The compliance and enforcement after that, the work starts only after the license has been issued, because there must be coordination between us and the other departments, even with the municipality, with the air quality officer here, with the waste management people, with the EIA department, and compliance and enforcement actions will be actually be part and parcel of the issuing of the license. So beyond licensing is very important. That's where our work actually starts. I just want to say that if people are convicted in terms of the Air Quality Act, for the first conviction, a fine of 5 million rand could be applicable, and 5 years imprisonment. Second conviction, 10 million and 10 years imprisonment. So it's not child play. If you're not abiding to the Air Quality Act or environmental legislation, there's consequences. There's huge consequences to a facility not abiding, and we will enforce that. We're not scared. We already closed industries that doesn't comply in Mossel Bay, and we will do it again if it's necessary. Now, the monitoring, compliance and enforcement. The AEL is a regulatory tool to manage facility and protect the environment. So the issuing of the license is actually a positive, because it will manage that facility. We only issue a provisional license for the start. They must show compliance for a period of at least 6 months to obtain a full AEL. It will address plant upset, startup, and shutdown conditions. ASEMS is non-negotiable. We already mentioned that. The continuous emission monitoring system will be installed from the onset. The conditions for area sources, we look at effluent, dust, storage tanks. All that stuff will be managed by the AEL. We will regulate the raw material, the production rates and hours of operation. We will look at the complaints register. There will be quarterly reporting, annual reporting. There will be penalties for non-compliance. And we can actually, as I mentioned, that bullet at the last, any other matter which are necessary for protecting the ambient air quality can be asked in the AEL. The waste management license, I'm not going to deal with my colleagues. It's their jurisdiction. But the waste license will look at permissible waste, and only general waste will be handled. The appointment of a waste management control officer, the construction phase, it will deal with the construction phase as well. the facility management according to approved EMP, facility security and access control, monitoring methods and parameters, impact management, environmental pollution investigations, auditing, monitoring committee, record keeping, reporting and rehabilitation. That will be dealt with by the waste license. So there's 2 licenses. So it's quite strictly managed, this whole process, by means of the waste license and then also the Air Quality Act. My last slide is that just no atmospheric emission license has been issued yet. We only granted the decision to actually grant. We took the decision to grant the license. That was the only thing. People think we already issued the license. A license is a 50-page document that hasn't been issued. That was a public document that can be circulated to the interested affected parties as well. So our next step will be, after the appeal has been dealt with, to issue the license, and that will be the next phase. We first have to await the appeal from our municipal manager from the garden route. If the appeal is dismissed, then the PAL will be issued. And I just want to say, lastly, garden route is a responsible authority, and we will not jeopardize the health of our community. We feel just as strong as our mayor of Mossel Bay and all the councillors here that we really want to protect. I'm staying in Mossel Bay, and my family is staying here. We want to protect the environment, and we know there are old age homes and people around that facility, and we want to protect that. And we will really strive up to live up to our vision to protect our equality and our environment. Thank you very much.
Dr. Skuman, okay. Thank you very much. Okay, there you go. Thanks a lot. Just want to stress it again. Then, like I've mentioned when we started, that Minister Burdell also indicated that can send maybe a mail to them if you want the assistance from the department while the appeal process is still going for the air emission license. But I see a hand, so we're going to move over to that. I just want to see whose hand I see. Councillor Gous, you can go.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. May I first say, can you hear me clearly because I have a headset on?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Let me first say thank you to all the presenters, and I especially appreciate the sentiment expressed now that we all value the air quality in Mossel Bay, specifically because tourism has been identified as a major, or this municipality drives tourism as a major economic input. So it's important for us to preserve our environment. Also very important, as it's also been expressed, that the health of our residents is paramount to all of us. Having said that, I'd like to ask just 3 questions quickly. If somebody could just explain the difference between pyrolysis and incineration. That's my first question. The second one is, Director Venter explained that the zoning is historic, and I think we all recognize that, but the problem is the environment has changed as human settlements have expanded close to that area. So we might need to start reconsidering historic zoning areas. And then I know that is also before committees today. The last question is reports regarding the emitted air quality. This is the concern, I think, with a lot of the residents, is that those reports are disputed by other experts. And until those have been reconciled, I think the concern will remain among residents and resistance to the project will remain for it to continue in this area. Thank you, Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gous. I'm going to ask that we then first deal with that set of questions. I'm going to give over to Dr. Johan.
Okay, thank you very much for that questions. I think it was in one of my slides, but perhaps I didn't touch on it. Waste incineration is heat treatment to destroy with no byproduct in presence of oxygen. So Incineration is to actually, it's much higher temperatures in the first place, and it's something to destroy. It's like a waste incineration where you want to destroy, and the product is that the stuff that's coming out is ash. That's very simply explained now. Depolymerisation or pyrolysis is a more environmental friendly process. It's a type of pyrolysis to recover with a byproduct like fuel, metal recovery and the like in absence of oxygen. So that is the main difference. The temperatures are also much lower. As I mentioned before, it's between 350 and 500 degrees Celsius. That is more or less the difference. And the pyrolysis is a closed loop system where you actually get a byproduct from, but the off gases, the condensables are actually used back to the system as a fuel. That's more or less, and incineration is to actually destruct. Then okay, the equality report from Mr. Chris Albertine and the disputes there around. Chris Albertine is a reputable equality specialist. He's a chemical engineer with about 35 years experience in equality management. And his report was done in terms of legislation. So he actually there are regulations governing the specialist equality study, and he did it precisely according to that dispersion modeling regulations. So I'm confident that the report that he did comply with legislation in the first place, and it was a reputable report. And I think lots of this concerns has been addressed in the comments and response document that was circulated by the EP. So there were questions about the special equality study, but I'm satisfied that it was addressed in the comments and response document as well. And in terms of the zoning, Paul?
Sorry, Meyer, can I just get a better understanding what is the issue of a question pertaining to the zoning?
They wanted the historic zoning to understand how the historic zoning was done and when it's
Chairperson, in terms of historical zoning, as I've explained, it was done and zoned in terms of applicable zoning scheme at that stage. At that stage, so provision was made for these type of activities in that particular date in time, and therefore, like I said, there was already an auction state actually happening, and it was just moved to a premises where it is currently is. And therefore, the applicable zoning was then also, or that zoning was applied to that particular portion of land.
If I may just interject, Acting Mayor, I think I wasn't maybe clear on my question. My question was specifically, I understand the zoning is a historic issue that we deal with, but I'm just saying that I think with the new developments that have happened over the years, it's maybe no longer wise to have it zoned as an industrial.
Chairperson, in terms of the moving from the previous, if I understand correctly, why can't it be changed then to something else? You can't take land use rights away. If it's vested, if it's there, like in this case, it vested. So in spite of having possibly newer and more updated zoning schemes, you cannot take land use rights away that already vested. Thank you.
I see there's lots of concerns regarding the distillation of diesel and that it was actually not mentioned initially, but only later. I just want to make it clear, it forms part of the separation process that was mentioned in the draft basic assessment. And then also the distillation of diesel was included in the final draft basic assessment report. But having to people are confusing distillation of diesel with a petrochemical facility like Petro SA, which is not. The distillation of diesel per se is not a listed activity with the Equality Act in the sense of the Rooikat facility. That's just a further process in terms of breaking that H2F, the HFO back to diesel. It's just a finer distillation process to actually break down the diesel to the oil back to diesel. So as such, if we look at distillation of diesel alone, it's not a listed activity. What makes it a listed activity is actually the thermal treatment of the plastic and the tires, and then the charcoal, the carbon black production. That is category 3.4, as I already mentioned, and not per se the distillation of diesel itself, but it was mentioned in the final draft basic assessment report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then I'm going to, Councillor Baron, you next with your questions, and then after that I'll go to Councillor Groenewald and then back to Councillor Gous again.
Yeah, Chairperson, I have with me Mr. Ronald Hakkelbord, so he will pose the question. Thank you.
Is that in order, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, you're more than welcome.
Is that in order? Let me just introduce myself. My name is Ronald Hakkelbord. I'm the chairman of the Ratepayers Association of Great Bragg River. At this point in time, we are supported by over 2,500 people who live in and around this area, various other ratepayers associations and homeowners associations. And we've been mandated by all these people to examine this whole scenario surrounding Rooikat. Now, ever since Rooikat started, and we were officially informed by our ward councillor only on the 18th of November last year. We have been working on this project for 10 months now. And I appreciate all the previous people that gave their presentations and said so many things, and I respect their knowledge and so forth. However, I just want to ask Dr. Schoeman one or two questions, if I may. Is that all right? Dr. Schoeman, I want to ask you, and then I think Mr. Anton Bredel as well, in other words, the people from the Department of Environmental Affairs, have any of you got any information, any data, any names and addresses of similar plants that they're planning to rig up here on the Mobicast land? We have not heard of a single plant that is being used as a comparison. I hear the air emissions license is going to prevent this and going to prevent that, and we'll be so strict on them and we'll check this and we check that. As far as we're concerned, that's like closing the stable door after the horse is bolted. Should there be something found over there after the Rooikat has invested millions upon millions, all of a sudden this plant is to be closed down? We don't even want emissions to be. We don't even want the place there. And it has been said to us that they can move to a zone 2 area. So my question is, why can we not move to a zone 2 area in Mosdastria, which will solve the problem for all people? And one last statement I'd like to make regarding all the presentations that we've had. I'm not quite sure whether or who has read Dr. Nell's reports, because in all of these reports, there are many answers to the allegations and the stories that have been made now. And I think it would be very good if the people also read those so that we could get a more balanced view of actually what the true situation is over here. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hakkelbord. We appreciate your questions. In the studies and the basic assessment reports, they mention this technology is international best available technology that are used internationally. So it's a common practice and it's a safe way of dealing with plastics and waste. And in terms of comparing that with a landfill site, I mean, it's a degradation process that are actually being done by thermal treatment. And as I mentioned before, that there are it is international practice, this pyrolysis, and yes, we did look at Mr. Nels, and I read through all the comments and response documents of all the people submitted to us. When we take a decision, we look at all the factors that as I alluded to in terms of Section 39 of the Act, and one of that is the comments from the public. The zoning of the, unfortunately, or fortunately, the zoning of the area is Industrial Zone 3, which is a correct zoning for this industry. And I think it's all about the output. You know, people are talking about, I can understand people are afraid because they think it's the burning of plastics and tires, which it is not. It's a process. And it's all about the output. And as I mentioned before, there will be checks and balances to actually control this in terms of the atmospheric emission license. And one of this is the SEM. So we will from the onset know what will the emissions be. And as I mentioned before, we will only issue a provisional atmospheric emission license. If they're not in compliance, we won't. We can actually withdraw the provisional atmospheric emission license, and we won't issue them with a full atmospheric emission license. But based on the studies done, we're confident that they will comply with legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to move over. Alderman Groenewald, your hand was up. Do you still want to ask something?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Now, let me first of all convey my appreciation for this opportunity and this initiative, and we thank you so much for that. I would like to ask and congratulate our Dr. Schoeman on his presentation, but I would like him to elaborate on the ability of the garden route to measure, to monitor, and to ensure compliance and towards the achievement of our vision. I would like him to not be, I would like him to share what garden route, what methods, systems, and whatever is in place that really will ensure compliance to whatever, whatever condition is attached to the provisional licensing. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Groenewald. Then just I see there's some comments who asked why there was not commented by the relevant authority, which is Mosselbaai Municipality, and I guess the reason for that is because legally there's already vested powers or rights. So the rights have already been vested in that land, and as the director indicated, we cannot take that away. So I think that was the reason for that. But I see the hand is up again. Councillor Baron, you can go.
Chairperson, thank you. I just have Mr. Evert de Lange here. He wanted to just speak about the PPP process, public participation. Thank you.
I want to thank the councillors for the opportunity to speak. And before I ask the questions, there's a few things that I want to mention first, and it's about the public participation process. Now, the public participation process, as you know, is mandated by law. And I don't want to go too deeply into the law, so I'm just going to quote from the paper that was presented to us in the DBAR and the guidelines from the DEA. First, if you look at the characteristics of a comprehensive public participation, is to obtain clear, accurate, and understandable information about the environmental impacts. Now, we've asked a lot of questions about the DBAR and how it was portrayed to the public. The problem is the comments and the response that we get is not answers to our questions, but reiterations what's already written in the DBAR. They keep telling us the same thing over and over again without answering our questions. So they are not conforming to their own clear guidelines. It is also another guideline to provide the role players to voice their support, concerns, or questions regarding the project. and the application of the decision. Now, I put it to you that the public participation process, as it was done, was deeply flawed. If you look at the way they did it by putting up a sign at the site itself, putting an English document in a predominantly Afrikaans area in the library of 212 pages, and not even attempting to reach communities like Wolvedans and Greenhaven, which are Afrikaans speaking, and some of them can't even read English. And very few of them have access to computers. Now, to continue, to provide the opportunity for role players to suggest ways of reducing and mitigating any negative impacts on the project and for enhancing positive impacts. We all suggest, it's not that we're against this project. We like the project, but we cannot do it in Grootbrak area, not that particular area. And if you do if you come and visit this place, you will immediately realize what the participants and the inhabitants are talking about. Now, the technical issues has to be resolved and reconciling conflict interest. We have a Dr. Nell, which is a PhD in this chemical processes that are differing on technical issues. He's differing on basically all the points. Now, I don't want to go through his whole report. It'll take a lot of time. What I'm just going to do is just on the environment, on the above mentioned comments, he makes the following appeals. He says the PPP was not completed. I'll continue with that. It is not a depolymerisation plant as per the application, but a full-blown petrochemical plant. So here's another PhD differing from your experts. Why can't that two experts sit around a table and find out what exactly is going on here? Why are we only listening to one side of the issue? The visual impact of black smoke, that's not even addressed in the D bar, but suddenly in the F bar it comes to fore. Even the information used to do this D bar report wasn't even Grootbrak's information. Now, the public participation process is to encourage transparency and accountability in decision making. I put it to you that there is no transparency during this issue. It was rushed through, and the public, they say there's 150 interested parties in this process that they reached. I put it to you, of those 150 parties, only 67 are individuals living in Grootbrak area. The rest are government organizations, etc. As opposed to the 2,500 plus signatures that we've already had that are opposing to putting this place at the Grootbrak area. Now, the other point I want to make, I mentioned the Wolvedans area and the Greenhaven. From the law, additional participation process may be required where significant changes have been made. Significant changes are made from the D bar to the F bar. And if you add new information, which was definitely done, and the scoping on the environmental impact, then you have to give people a chance to look at the final plan and make a comment on that. None of that was done. At the moment, I've looked at the census numbers of 2011. That's the closest I can get. 67% of the inhabitants of Grootbrak area lives in Wolvedans and Greenhaven. No attempt was made to reach them. We have a letter from Mr. Jacobs where he objects strenuously to what is happening here without informing the people. I want to know who was responsible for this public participation process, which was a sham. It was a whitewash. It was not done properly. And we demand that this process be done over again. We will not accept what's happening at the moment. We will not accept if it's just pushed on us without getting the public involved and answering their questions. I've listened to the presentation. I've read all the documents, And what was said today is nothing different than what was said in all the documents I was reading and the DBAR. Every time we ask a question, they just reiterate the DBAR to us, which we know by heart by now. But the question still doesn't get answered. I want the experts to sit around the table and talk to each other. I want the public to be involved every step of the way, and that includes the broadening publication of special needs. Announcing the PPP on a local radio station in a local language is part of the things that the law mandates when you talk about special people. Wolverdan's people, Greenhaven, are such people. Using participatory rural appraisal and participatory learning and action approaches and technique could be used to build the capacity for the interest parties to engage and participate. Specific approaches to existing community structures, committees and leaders. I'm aware of committees that were told not to speak about this project. When they asked the questions to their ward councillors, they were silenced and say, you're not allowed to talk about it. As far as I know, it is their duty to inform the public that elected them, and they should inform the public. That was not done. I have the proof of that. And I can make it available if you ask for it. Holding public meetings and times. I know COVID-19 will be called into question here. The problem is you can still put 50 people into a hall and speak to them. And the next night you can put another 50 people in the hall. It can still be done. Holding separate meetings with vulnerable and marginalized groups. That wasn't done. We have a lot of those. What about the old people in Grootbrak, in all the old age homes? Nobody reached them. What about the holiday home owners? That if they extend their participation process by just 30 days, they would have reached those people in December month. But half of the people outside of Wolverdans and Greenhaven is owners of holiday homes in Grootbrak area. They were totally ignored. So to use the following mechanism over and above the required should also be considered. This is coming from the DBAR document. It's coming from Sharples that did the participating process. Public meetings, conferences, press releases, questionnaires and opinion surveys. Well, 2,500 signatures tells you what the public thinks about it at the moment. Information desk, web-based platforms, meeting workshops. Gentlemen, this is not a workshop. What we just listened to was a presentation that was already done in all the documents. A workshop is sitting around a table and discuss these issues until everybody is happy that they understand what is happening. So my last question is it possible for us to please sit around the table with all the experts around the table, opposing and for, and then discuss the issues so that we can put this all to rest? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Walid, I see your hands up. I'm going to let you speak first then.
Thank you, sir. I think if I'm allowed, I might need to share my presentation again, if that's okay.
Yeah, we can do that if it will be quick.
Okay, I just need to jump to a certain slide. Okay, so what you see before you is the site layout, and I just wanted to clarify that you have a depolymerization plant in this illustration, and the product that comes from this process is heavy fuel oil. So this layout doesn't depict an illustration of a distillation plant. So this is definitely not a full-blown petrochemical plant. I just wanted to make that clear. And then the other question, which Dr. Skuman already answered, was the question about the difference between an incinerator and a depolymerization plant. I just wanted to add to that answer that incinerator burns the material, whereas a depolymerization plant only heats it up. Yes, and then to the statement that was made, I think I just need to jump to my last slide. It was okay. So yes, the public participation process was carried between 28th of October 2020 until 27th November 2020. But then a brief reminder that there were public meetings held thereafter, and also Mr. Ronald was engaged with by the environmental assessment practitioner even after the closure of the public participation process. Thank you.
Thank you, Walid. As a way forward, as I've mentioned, the Minister Bradell did indicate that he will be willing to send some of the some of his department's people to come and engage. He was referring more to the emission license, but I do understand that there's some concerns and comments, and obviously they also work in that same department. So I think that must maybe the concerns that's been raised regarding the public participation process, I think must be taken up with them or the minister himself. That will be my suggestion. I see Lance, your hand is up. You can talk.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon once again, colleagues. And thank you, Walid and Sean, for giving clarity on the technical matters around this particular application. The reason why Walid and Sean are involved because Walid has done quite in-depth research when this particular process and this particular application was put on the table. And just coming back to the previous question that was raised about the public participation process. The fact that the matter was tabled for an appeal, and the sum of the parts of the application have been reviewed with input from our waste management component, as well as the appeals unit, we found that the public participation was adequate, and based on the minister's decision, if he felt that this public participation process was not adequate, then there would have probably been a different outcome of the appeal. And as the chairperson has mentioned, there's by no means a problem. If you need clarity on that matter, discuss the matter with Minister Bradell as he has proposed. And I think it is important that we do remember we've made the decision, it has been appealed, and the appeal has been dismissed based on the information that was given. The other matter that I'd like to put on the table is that, yes, I do agree that the processes do take strain and have taken strain, and there have been different ways of approaching various matters during the COVID pandemic. And the question I also ask is, and I stand to be corrected, I know that there were probably 2 or 3 appeals that were put into the process that were timeless. So remember, there's also that administrative process that needs to be followed. And the question I ask is, were there any appeals or concerns from the residents of Wolverdans that have been mentioned in this discussion? So that's all I'd like to put on the table, colleagues and honourable guest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Then I don't see any hands. Mr. Baron, I see your hand again, Councillor.
Yeah, Chairperson, I agree from my side. I agree fully with the suggestion that you made for the interaction with our provincial component. So if we can arrange that I think I will be happy. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Baron. Then I want to thank all the role players here around the table this afternoon, our colleagues from Province who were willing to also give us their inputs and feedback. Then obviously I must obviously then if anybody feel that they their rights were not honored, then the last resort obviously is to go to the court, who will also have a objective view over all of this. But like I've mentioned, I did discuss it with the minister. I can just mention that at this stage he told me that also this morning earlier when we spoke that he's seen plants like this in the middle of Paris and also waste plants in Europe in the middle of cities. And I think that the whole argument must be made about proper management. This is obviously just the beginning. I think it's important that we must tell each other that we're sitting currently with a crisis in terms of job creation. So this is not my plant, so I'm not going to try to be pro it, but I'm just conveying his message as well, obviously for which I also have respect. There's I think Walid mentioned the livelihood of people. At this stage, the minister this morning mentioned that more than 100,000 people moved into our area over the past few years. He said with the stats, and obviously we are generating more waste, which is a problem and a concern. And from our side, I can just mention from the municipality side, we're working tremendously hard to portray Mossel Bay as a forward and an innovative and a safe haven municipality where we govern properly and where we have proper services. So one of the few ways how we can make sure that the people in our area, that there's social upliftment and that people have jobs is to create industry. But I understand also the feeling of not in my backyard. The positive that I took out of it is the provisional 1-year license, which can be revoked. That is very important. The continuous monitoring, I think that is very important. And the fact that it will be so expensive might make the people also think twice. I know it's just a pilot project at this stage, but I like the idea that it's not been made that easy to just start. Obviously, it is of utmost importance. I also don't want to live in a town where the people, and I also don't want to live a legacy. I don't think this council would like to leave a legacy where people are inhaling bad gases and so forth. So where it's not healthy and where it's detrimental to the environment. I'm also a keen environmental person who believe in rehabilitating our environment. And yeah, so I'm not going to dwell longer on that. I want to thank everybody, and I see Councillor Groenewald, your hand is still up. I'm quickly going to give to you, and then we can close the meeting.
Thank you very much, Chair. Now, my question or my request was to Dr. Skuman, just to give assurance that the Garden Route municipality really, do have all the methods and everything in place to ensure compliance with whatever condition that's being set. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Groenewald. I think we said it all. Our vision is to have equality worthy of the name Garden Route, and I think Garden Route is one of the best district municipality equality units in the country. I mean, it's not that I'm saying that; it's people from the outside that say that. We've got a very good relationship with our provincial department and also our national department. So if we need any expertise or any further assistance that we can't do in-house, we will get it from outside. We've got 3 continuous emission monitoring stations in the Garden Route. One is located in Mossel Bay. So and that's a big plus for us as well. So we can actually measure, we are continuously measuring the ambient air quality. There are industries that are also doing ambient air quality management in terms of air quality monitoring stations. Actually, there's 2 in Mossel Bay. So we've got a mobile air quality monitoring station that we can move around. So if that we will definitely start by get the baseline of the Great Brock River ambient air quality standard, and then after the commissioning of the plant, we will actually place our mobile station at specific locations in Grape Rock River to actually measure the ambient air quality, to see that besides the fact that the industry will have to actually monitor their emissions, we will also do our measurements in that area. And as I said, get a baseline. Gardenwood is more than capable of managing air quality. We've got a 100% compliance rate of all our industries. They always report, we always can submit 100% compliance in terms of the national emissions inventory systems. We're quite reputable and we're capable, and we've got the whole municipal health component with the Gardenwood. They will also manage it locally. We've got Mr. Sam Bendel and his team. So it's not only me and Angus, it's the whole team of the Gardenwood, and we're more than capable of managing air quality in our region, and we will make sure that they comply. If they're not in compliance, I've mentioned that before, we closed businesses in the past, and we will do it again to making sure that they comply. If they're not comply, they're not going to get a full license. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, then I want to thank all the role players who played their part here this afternoon. Also to the concerned community out there. I hope some of the answers questions have been answered. And yeah, like I've mentioned, the door's open. So at this stage, then if there's any request for the minister, my suggestion will be to give that through to him. Obviously, the request can come to us as well with other questions. If there's any other questions that's still outstanding from the community, please put it in writing to admin@mossel-bay.gov.za. We will try answer it, or we will get the correct people to try and answer it. We won't be able to answer it, I suppose. But then if there's a request for the minister also to send somebody, then that request can also be communicated. So the communication lines are open. Like I've mentioned, we are concerned about our environment, but on the other hand, let's see how we can maybe find a way how we can not have a all or nothing approach, and how we can move forward. Like I've mentioned, on the one hand, we've got the environment. On the other hand, we've got the livelihoods of people. We are in the midst of a terrible pandemic. We see a lot of people losing their jobs. We see a lot of people in the tourism industry, especially in the tourism industry at this stage, who's suffering. So we are worried about the livelihoods of our people, about the social conditions. It's a reality. It's out there. It's happening. It's not something that's going to happen. It's already happening. So it is of major concern to this municipality with our dwindling income streams, various of them. Also national grants from the national fiscus, equitable share, and so forth. So there's a few crises staring us in the eyes. We don't want the environment to be one of them. So if this thing go forward in future, possibly, Doctor, we would also from our council side would want to ask you that we ensure that proper management's being enforced. That's of utmost importance. But okay, let's first get the questions, and then we can move from there. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair, and to all the presenters. We really appreciate your effort. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.